Hi guys, this is Tina with Rehatch Designs, and I'm here today to kind of go over some collaging that I did to make these tags. I had some people asking me about how I made the tag and this kind of how I did it, and I thought I'd go through that process real quick, or as quick as possible, and show you what I did. I usually make a collage sheet up, and what I'll do is I'll cut it all up and then later make tags for it. And I'll make some ahead of time, but for the most part I just keep the tags in this form until I know what I'm going to use it for. This is what I made to go in our book that we are making. The latest one on our junk journal is this Tales of Us, this romantic one that we had. And so anyway, what I thought I'd do is kind of go through the process of how I do it. I know everyone has their way of doing it. There's probably better ways than mine out there, but this is kind of how I do it to get to the point where I have a jumping off point that I use. Because what I'll do is I'll make a bunch of one big thing of collage up, mixed media, and then I'll cut it all up and I'll have a bunch of these, different size tags. And then I may go and do some stamping on it like that, or in this one, I think I did 3 like that. There's some embossing that I'll do sometimes. And it just kind of depends on what I think I might use them for. I may make a bunch up randomly, or I may just keep them, like this in this form and then add things to it. This one is very similar to what this looked like. I put the silver on the outside, the gold here. This is done with embossing, and so one thing I really love about doing the junk journals is that I get to use a lot of the stuff that I have, and in different ways, and just kind of play with it. But you could do this a lot of different ways if you just with a stamp if you wanted to. But to me, I like the different textures, and I think that's why I like to do the embossing on there. So anyway, we're going to go through and do this part today to get to that, and then we'll show you the other parts of how I do that probably in a second video. So first of all, the first thing that I do is I figure out what I'm going to do my collage on. Now you can use a piece of cardstock if you got it. You want it pretty heavy. It doesn't have to be super heavy, but you want it enough to where the glue isn't just going to seep through it. What happens is when you use, I use Mod Podge too, by the way. Like I said, I just go to the dollar store and I get these small bottles. And on this, it really doesn't matter if you use gloss or you use the matte. I have some gloss bottles that I usually use on this just to use them up, because on my other stuff I usually use the matte. So I'm going to use this today, and it may take the whole thing. I don't know, or half of it or whatever. And then you could also, I like to use file folders because I just seem to have a bunch lying around. And you can, again, pick these up at the dollar store too if you don't want to buy a large quantity, because it seems like everywhere else you have to buy like a really large quantity. In any case, then what I do, let me get this real quick. Hold on just a second. All right, as I pick out my paper that I want to use for my collage, and that has a lot. If I'm just making it generically, then I'll just, I won't put a lot of color in it usually, and I'll just do It's just some generic stuff in there. These are papers that I bought in a paper pad. I don't even remember which one. That are already kind of collaged up. You could use those. The thing is, usually by the time I do it, you can't see a lot of this stuff anyway. So I don't always use that. This is good because it has script in it. And it's a lighter weight. Usually the lighter weight papers are better for collaging than the heavier weight. You can use the heavier weight, but for instance, I will tell you, I love this paper. This is a mixed media pad that I bought. I don't even remember what the, I know I got it at Tuesday morning. But what I like to do with this paper, this kind of paper, the thicker paper that's kind of like this already, that already looks like mixed media, is I will take this and just make tags out of it and just collage or do things on that tag. Now, you could, as a base, use this and then add things to it, but usually what I end up doing is when I'm making the mixed media the way that I do it, is I'm pretty much covering the whole thing, so that, you know, to me that would be a waste of this. So usually what I do is I love these papers, and I take these and I make tags out of them and just add some stamping and a few other things. So I'm not usually covering what's already there. So I don't usually use that. Something like this. This is a lot lighter weight, but it's really kind of cool. This would work good too. This kind of stuff works great. It looks like it has texture, but it's a lighter weight. So I wouldn't probably use this, you know, unless I put it on something to make a tag. But that would work. I'm not going to use that today for our purposes because I kind of have in mind the pinks and the romantic and that type of thing. So, but that would work really well, that kind of paper. Now, there are some basics that I always use, and it really kind of doesn't matter what the, let me move this out of the way. It doesn't really kind of matter what collage I do. I always have this on hand. I try and have, here I have dictionary page that has a smaller font. I have two different kinds. You don't have to have two different kinds. I just happen to have two. This is a French English. This is the old one. And the variation in color, too, of your paper is good because that'll show up. I try and have, oh, and here's variation in text. You may have, you may have multiple, you know, book pages, variation in the size of the font. Also, the color of the paper, that's a good thing to have. If you have, lucky enough to have, you know, different types of music paper, and it goes kind of the same with the book. You know, you just want different fonts, different sizes, if you can get it. And you know, that way when you put it down there, it varies a little bit. And that's the kind of thing too that if you're going to do junk journaling, to kind of go out, be on the hunt for it. It's really not that hard to find at thrift stores, and you can get it pretty easily. This is the parchment paper I had, and as you can see, it has a completely different font, different feel and texture, so I would use that too. You know, just the other thing is papers. Like I said, you know, if you have something specific in mind and you want certain colors, then that's kind of what you would want to do. This is really a gorgeous looking paper that's already kind of collaged. And you could use this, but to me, I would rather just keep this like it is and cut out portions of it and put it directly on a tag and then add to it. I mean, to me, that's what I would do with this, because you're not really going to be able to see the different, you know, pieces, because we're going to use small pieces, so you'd be cutting out just small portions of it. And to me, it'd be kind of a waste to use this paper that way. I mean, to me, it would be much better to just cut out pieces. And on this, I would probably use it on a larger tag and then put that on a tag and then add to it. And that's one way that you can make tags and use this stuff. And it's, you know, that's how I would prefer to use that. For my purposes, and you can see right now, I've already torn into this and used it, and that's another thing. You want to keep all of your scraps that, you know, when you're making journals, and because these are perfect size to rip up and use and that type of thing. This is good because it's a lighter weight. It has a lot of different colors in it. A tight pattern. That's a good thing to use. So you want to keep your scraps for sure. I use, sometimes I'll take you'll see this kind of mixed media looking thing, and this is a very lightweight. I'll tear off little pieces of this and just put that on there, like maybe the stamp or the postcard or some of the writing, and that's a good thing to use along with your different fonts and scripts and whatever. Leave that aside. And here's different papers that I picked out because I kind of wanted to do the pinks and the flowers and that type of thing, and I'll use stuff like this. You know, this is lighter weight. You want a little bit tighter pattern if you want to see it, but I mean, it doesn't really matter because in the end, you won't see much of it. This I picked out just for the color pink because you're going to see that. Now, some of this will be in there too, but you're not going to really see the rest of this, and I'm trying not to use it because I'm probably going to wind up cutting that off and using it for a tag. And then I picked these two just to put some different color on there. Anyway, that's what we're going to use today. And let me show you. I just took my file folder and I took it and cut it. I cut this portion off, then I cut it in half, and I ended up with two pieces about this big. And I will usually work on a size about this size or maybe a little bit bigger, but usually not much more because your paper dries, your glue starts drying, and it's just easier to work in smaller amounts. So the other thing that I usually use a lot of is and again, it depends on the look that I'm trying to get. I'll use doilies, different sizes, because as you can tell, it has a different weave and stuff. This adds a lot of texture. You can, I'm going to use these today. Be careful too on your doilies because a lot of times they'll be doubled and you're going to, waste them. Tissue paper, I always seem to use tissue paper. I like it to fill in. This one has wording on it. This is just gold. This is the paper that I used, and I'm kind of bummed because I thought I had more of it and I don't, but I can go buy some more. We're going to use some, and I will use tissue paper, different colors, and disperse it through the tag. And the reason I do that is because I put gesso over my tag when I'm done, and even though the color may seem kind of intense and bright, after you dull it down a little bit, you don't see it that much. So anyway, that's a big thing. I use that. I use this. The other thing you can use is if you have die cuts and little offshoots from that, you can take that and let me see if I have any real quick to show you what I'm talking about. I think I do. Hold on just a second. Let me see. I do? I have some. Okay, here we go. Like if you have this type of thing, I go through and I'll do a bunch of that. But usually on this stuff, I prefer to put this on my tag after I'm done. You know, before, and I don't usually gesso my tags. I don't gesso my sheet until, or my tags, and unless I do them individually is what I'm trying to say. I don't do the whole thing usually, unless I know for sure what I'm going to use it for, because I a lot of times will add this later. So today I'm probably going to go ahead and gesso it to show you what it looks like, but you can do it either way. You can go ahead and gesso your whole sheet and then cut it out, or you can do it, you know, as you do your tag and cut out each tag and then do whatever. I kind of do it both ways, but this is kind of a cool thing that you can add on there if you want to. I mean, I don't know. I usually do this, as I said, after on each individual tag, because then I kind of decide what I want to do. But you could add that as you're doing it. I'm not going to this time, but I will show you how I do that later. Anyway, so today we're going to do this, and we're going to go ahead and, you know, show you how I do this kind of mixed media collage thing. Just because I think there's, depending upon what you're going to use it for, you're going to do it differently. When you're going to use it to make tags, you want to be able to see all the different, get the blank one here. You kind of want to be able to see all the different textures and everything. And if you're doing it for like a cover, you may want certain things to be seen, you know, like maybe a postcard or the Eiffel Tower or whatever. And on a tag, you're really not going to be able to see that because everything's smaller. So you usually don't have, you know, a lot on there as far as specific things. So I think you kind of do them differently. And this to me is a great way of having stuff on hand. Like I said, I have these. I probably have a stack of at least 5 of these that I can just pull out and decorate, you know, to however I want it for that journal. So when this is messy, so when I do this, I usually do, you know, 2 or 3 of them at the same time, you know, and I may make them all different. I may make them the same, just depending upon, you know, what I want to do. Anyway, let me get a drink here of some coffee. Anyway, I hope everybody is having a great day and taking some time to do some crafting. I call this my crafting therapy, so I'm doing a little bit of that because I'm a little overwhelmed at all the things I have to do in my house. So I told my husband, I said I'm going to be doing some crafting therapy before I start doing my other stuff. It probably should be the other way around. I should reward myself, you know, for doing my work, but I'm just going to do this, and then hopefully I'll feel guilty that I spent so much time in my craft room and get some other stuff done. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and start with first. I take my Mod Podge and I just take it and put it directly into these little containers. And these containers I got from my, I'll take about half of this bottle. These containers I got from my dog. I have a little miniature schnauzer, and this is her little, you know, where her food comes in. And boy, I love these things. They're the perfect size, and I reuse them. But you know, they're great because I can throw them away later. I have still trying to train my husband, you know, the things that he's not supposed to throw away or recycle or whatever. So, you know, that's still a work in progress. I take a little bit of water, you know, maybe a little more. I have a paintbrush that I use almost all the time just for, yeah, spilled a little. That's another thing. This is messy. Keep a rag or something by and some wipes just for this purpose. And what I usually do is I do it like 50-50. I think I put a little bit too much water in there though. That way, I mean, I think it's a little too thick the way it is. And the way I do this is I will cover about half of it and then work the other half. But this is a little bit smaller piece, so I may go ahead and just do the whole thing. If it starts to dry, it's not a big deal. And I use this glass mat. I love it. And I actually, most of the time, that's all I use. I had my other pink mat out because I know that there's glare from the glass. And under my table that I use is not, it's not a desk, it's an old table that one of my sons had in his first apartment after college that I had got for him, and then he moved out and, you know, decided he didn't want it, and I was going to get rid of it. You know, I put it out on the marketplace and I looked at it and it had a leaf in it, and I took the leaf out, and then I thought, oh, lo and behold, it's perfect for my craft room. And it was already the color that I wanted it. And then another one of my sons got rid of a desk, and the desk had a glass top on it. And as it was getting ready to be thrown in the trash, and I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, that glass top will work great on top of my table. So this has a glass top on top of the table. It doesn't cover the whole table, but the good portion that I use. And then I have this glass mat, and I'll tell you, I love it. I absolutely love that setup. It's great. It's pretty. My table underneath probably needs to be repainted, but still, it's so easy to clean up. Just great. Anyway, what I do first then is I take this and I just start, usually I work with my colored paper first, and don't worry about the white edges because those will they'll get covered up. You won't be able to see them later. And I do smaller pieces, and the reason I do smaller pieces is that your tags are not going to be that big. So if you want enough variance in the different colors, you really kind of have to use smaller pieces. So that's why I say I think it's different. And I take the one color and I spread it all around and go off the sides, because we're going to be able to cut that later. So I do that, kind of go all over. And I keep in mind how big a tag is, and then I go in the middle. I try not to have straight edges. If I have straight edges, then I take those and I put those here so that you won't be able to see them. And like I said, you can take smaller pieces, bigger pieces. And if you end up putting some in there that are too big, that's okay, because we can fix it later. I don't think I want to do any more of that pink. I think we're going to be too pinked out. Let's do some of this. And this is why too that you want the thinner paper, because I think it works better. Now see, that's a straight edge. I don't like that, so I'm going to go like that. And if you do wind up putting some straight edges in there, not a big deal, because you can always cover that up later. Like I said, don't worry about the white parts, because that'll get covered up later. Because when you put your gesso over it, you won't even see that. Don't worry if it's not sticking great, if your paper is starting to dry, because, I mean, your glue is starting to dry, because we can always put more glue on there. This is just like a first run. Now, a lot of people use glue stick, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. I just don't like to use up all my glue stick, so. And plus, this to me is faster, because I don't like to, let's see, it's starting to dry. That's part of the reason why I water it down too. And when you go over it like this, you're already starting to stick down pieces. And don't worry about the pieces sticking down, because they'll all get stuck down. So go like that. And see, that's two pieces next to each other. I don't know. I'll put that right here, maybe. No, maybe there. That broke, so take that off of there. Having a hard time with that, aren't I? Okay, and I just covered that up. That's not the end of the world either if you go over other pieces. I really am having a hard time putting that anywhere. I think it's because I'm starting to put too much of one. Let me find some other stuff. Okay, let's put that in there. I'm going to put that down. And like I said, whatever colors you use is really dependent upon the look that you're trying to get to. Just remember that you're really not going to be able to see much of your pattern anywhere, so it's just going to end up, you want it to vary enough. Like, I think right now I'm putting too much green down, but that's okay, we'll fix it. And I overlap a lot of mine too, so you're not gonna see let's see, that has a straight edge. I try not to have straight edges. I do small pieces. There we go. If stuff moves around a little, I don't really care. I have fun with this. I don't really worry too much. It usually always turns out pretty good, no matter what. I don't think I've ever done one that I've not used, or I thought, oh, this is, because you can always, you know, add paint or something to it, and get it to where, and that's another thing too. If you do a neutral, kind of a neutral background, and you have these on hand, what'll happen is you can also add paint to it. Now I'm using some of my script stuff. This stuff, the only thing is, like I said, you end up not seeing very much of the like, see, that has post on there. I don't know, but you're only not going to see that much of it. Like, here's a little stamp. Maybe I want that stamp to be seen, so I would cut that out and put that maybe over here. Like this helps. Take that. Put that. That's kind of big. So you're going to just maybe put that there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some of my different script paper to overlap some of this. Take more, need more of the middle. And here we go. Like I said, don't worry that it's not sticking down perfectly, because I'm going to come back in with some more glue. Now, the one thing that I always have a hard time myself is that I don't necessarily do the pieces as small as I should, because I get in a hurry. That's the one thing that I would say. you have to think about is just making sure that your pieces are small. And if you do some that are too big, don't worry about it. You can still kind of go back in and rip it and do whatever you need to do. But I try, and you can overlap. That's one thing that, you know, that's why you kind of want the thinner pieces so that you can overlap them and it's not too bulky. So anyway, usually when I do one thing, I go and I take some glue and I kind of glue it down, and then I go back. Excuse me, I think I'm out of frame there. Move over. I go back and it helps get those pieces down, but it also gives you more glue to adhere the next stuff that you're going to put on there. So anyway, let's get some more glue in there. So here's some of our dictionary. Let's start putting that in. And the reason I do it like this is that this way I'm spreading it all the way around. And I don't know. At least for me in my head, it kind of works better that way. Go. And don't worry about if you have like little tiny spots that you haven't filled in, because we'll get that later. And even if you end up with some, it's no big deal. It really isn't, because let's put that right here. Because in the end, what will happen is you'll end up with enough stuff that you're putting on top and your gesso that you'll never even see those spots. So now I'm coming in with some of my music paper, and you know, depending upon what you have, you know, you can, or you know, put different, if it has different coloring to the paper, that adds to the character, I think, and the texture. So anyway, let's put that in there. And you're going to end up with a big pile of scraps when you get done, and that's something that you want to use in your next one. See, now this, I love this paper, and I can't really use this paper for, now see how this is kind of the same here? So if I put this down, what does it do? It kind of gives us some more variance and a little bit more texture. And that's another thing too, if your glue's starting to dry, you can just take each piece and go like that if you want to. And I don't worry about if the text is, you know, upside down or not. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter. It might matter to some people, but I don't really think, by the time you add all the stuff to it, nobody's looking to see if it's upside down or not. Let's see, put that right here. Okay, maybe we need some up there. Yeah, see, this stuff almost crumbles. It's so old, but I think it's wonderful. I think I got that in my set of stuff. I bought it on eBay, and the whole thing, I think it had 5 books in it. It had that, a hymnal, a dictionary, and a Shakespeare book. And they were all pretty old. The books were, you know, they were in really bad shape. But I think I got, was it 5 books? I can't remember what the other one was. and it was like $6. So, and you know, you don't use that many pages. So let's see, I don't know if I'm going to use this or not, because we may be getting too much. I want to make sure I have a lot of color in this, so I'll put a little bit in here. And that's another thing, if you do this and later you go, oh, I don't know, I shouldn't have, you can cover it up pretty easily. You can go back in and redo pieces. Now you can see why, if you look at this, why you want the different fonts and things, because you can, it really adds to it. Okay, now let me get some of the stuff out of the way. Let's see if I want to add more. Oh, I wanted to add some of this too. I thought this was kind of cool. It has kind of a brick pattern, but I thought the texture of it was really, really neat. So I'll put some of that in a few places. And another thing too is make sure on the ends that you just, it's best if you just go over the ends, and then later what'll happen is we'll cut that off, because you don't want to have it look like you've just, you know, you've pieced it in there perfectly. And this is just something that, you know, I really enjoy doing this, and to me it's very relaxing. I'll, you know, turn the TV on, and there's just sometimes, you know, I just want to do something that's a little artistic. And you know, I know you, like I showed you some of those collage sheets and stuff that you can get already made and things like that, but you know, and I guess that can save you a lot of time. It doesn't have the texture that you will have if you do this on your own, but you know, it's a good, you know, it's a good resource. But to me, the reason I love the junk journaling is because it allows me to have some artistry involved in my craft. And if everything's already done for me, then, you know, I don't think I'm being very creative then. So that's, you know, that's just something. I mean, I want to be able to do things on my own. And I know there's a lot of, and I do use a lot of digitals and things like that, but I don't want everything to match perfectly, and I don't want everything completely done for me, because then it kind of defeats the purpose of why I like doing this. So, and I don't know if other people feel that way or not, but that's kind of how I feel. So, I don't know. Let me put some of that down there. And I know I have holes, guys, but we're going to fill them in. Okay, so here we are so far. This is what we've done. And there's a few spots. Don't worry about the spots that aren't stuck down. We're still going to add more glue to it. Now, this is the part where I kind of fill in the spots, okay? I'll look at it and go, do I need more of this color here, that color there? And I don't worry about it being perfectly dispersed all over. You know, I really don't. I'm just trying to get enough varied colors in there. Put more glue in there. I think I put way too much water in there. Mix that up a little. I don't have I'd honestly go like 50-50. And then my last coat, I'll put on there. Okay, the next thing I usually do is if I have tissue paper I'm going to add, this is when I add it. Again, in small pieces. This is a gold tissue paper, and I'll put it like right here. I'll put it, see where we have these little holes here? I probably want a smaller piece. I know Smaller is usually always better. I'm not sure why, but it just somehow ends up looking better, I think. That's just my opinion. I don't know. Some other people may do it differently, and I try and disperse this kind of the same way. You know, I don't want to put too much in one area because I know I'm going to add other things. But this is just a little pop here and there. Alright, maybe put one up here. I need more glue on here. When it gets to where it's really dry, you could just individually go like that and then put you know, whatever you want down, and then that works. You don't have to redo the whole thing. When you get to this point, that's kind of what I usually do. Alright, so, and then I go over that, just kind of get it down. I'll probably add more later, but I'm going to add other things. Now I have this tissue paper that has writing on it, and I love this because the cool thing about this is that you can take, like, let's say I put too much of this down, I can take that and put it right on top, and it, you know, it doesn't make it too thick, and that's usually what I do with this, is I think I kind of fix my boo-boos with it, is what I think I do. I mean, that's kind of what, you know, like, I don't know, maybe I put too much of, I don't know, this here, where I have a little hole, then I'll stick that down there. Or I'll have maybe this. I put maybe too big of a piece of something. Or maybe, let's see, like this. Let's see what I did here. Let's say, I don't know, let me look like right here. Okay, so I have maybe too much here, and I want to kind of break that up a little bit. Then I'm going to take this and go, you know, like that. Maybe I have a gap right here that I want to add something to. All right, so that's kind of what I do with this. Yeah, okay. Now, I had more of this and I love it. But this paper is great because it adds a little pop of sparkle if that's what you want. A little goes a long way. And I usually add that over. Now, see, I have some gaps there. And on those gaps, I probably would take another piece of paper. Let's see what I want. I don't want that there. And put that in there. And fill that in. Like maybe right there. I don't know if I have a gap right there. Let's see if we can put this in there. And this is where this is at the point where I start doing that. Okay, and I'll go back in, and you know, I do this basically the same way that I do the rest. I kind of try and disperse it throughout to make it kind of evenly distributed. You know, and the good thing about the tissue paper, like I said, you can take that and put it over your other stuff because it's thin enough to where that'll work. All right, I don't know. Put some more over here. Put some here. I don't have a lot of this left. I need to go get some more. And I'll buy the specialty tissue paper because I don't usually use it in my gifts because it costs too much. And I use it just for this purpose. I mean, just for this. That's it. So, works great. Just in any kind of collage, I think. I'm kind of bummed that I ran out of this, but I can get more. So, let's see. Get that off of there. Okay, I'm going to hold off on putting more on for a minute. Now, one of the other things I almost always add, and it really depends on, you know, the style that you're looking for, but I'll take little pieces of doily and put that in on here. And I just usually use the end part of it. I mean, this part, I mean, you can use that, but that's kind of not the look I'm going for. So put that down, and I'll stick it down more in a minute and put that in little pieces all over. Okay. And this is the part where you're going to have to kind of glue it down a little bit. Okay. And this doesn't really take very long. And the thing is when I first started doing this, I think I overthought it a bunch, and I tried to, you know, I don't know, I tortured myself and making sure I got everything where it needed to be. And I really did figure out pretty quick that you can't really mess up too bad. I mean, it's kind of hard to. Like I said, we're going to cover a lot of this up with gesso, and then you're going to have other stuff on top of it. So, you know, it's really kind of a great way to use up your scraps. Now, you saw me tearing up papers, and I usually use only scraps. But, you know, if I'm going to do something specifically and I want certain colors, I'll certainly go through and take my scrapbook paper and pick out things. Partly too is I've had some stuff forever, and you saw even on this journal, we only used like maybe 4 or 5 pieces of paper. So it's going to take me a long time to use up all my scrapbook paper. So I quit hoarding it and started getting stuff out. And you know, I mean, you really have to think of it that way, is that if you don't start using it, it's going to be there long after you're gone. That's just kind of how I look at it. And I've started taking stuff out and making sure I use it. I'm going to hold off on that. Now I have some of this pink. I'm going to put some pink in there. Maybe here or there. I might have put too much white. We shall see. I don't know. Here we go. And you know, the big thing for me on this is that it does add a lot of texture. And if you get the pre-collage stuff, whether it be in paper or digitals, you know, like I said, I use that as a starting point. But it's not the same as doing this, because this adds a great deal of texture to your tags that you're not going to get from something that is just printed. So, and if you really love what you come up with and you want to use it over and over, you know, you can just scan it and, you know, use it that way too. So, I don't know. That's something to consider. I don't think I've done that, but because I really like I said, I like the texture of doing it this way, how it ends up looking. So, you know, a scan is great, but it's not the same as having that texture. I don't know. We'll put that piece. And let's see. Maybe right here. Okay, so let's see if there's any more pieces I need to add. I think it looks pretty good. So at this point, what I do is I take my glue and I go over the whole thing. And if I see pieces that need to go down, then I go back in, make sure I have glue on them. Like, see this right here, we have a piece popping up. If I put enough glue on there, it's going to go down. down. Like, see, this parchment paper is having a hard time going down. You may take it and rub it with your finger, and that helps. Go down. Let's see our little doily. You have to be careful with this stuff. It's very delicate. That's one reason I put it on last. So anyway, you go all the way across it. Make sure it's all down. It's very wet. Ugh. All right. And this is usually where I use my Mod Podge, not watered down. So anyway, then you take that and you can hit it with your heat gun, whatever. I usually just leave it out and then wait for it to dry. I don't, overnight or whatever. So that's kind of what I do. But anyway, you're going to end up with something that looks, let me wipe this off real quick and get this stuff out of the way. All right. Yeah. I always use, by the way, on this mat, I buy dollar store alcohol and I spray it on there, let it sit for a minute. I have this little scraping tool, which is actually, I think it was a cookie spatula or something. And the reason I like it is the way it's bent. And then this part, it has like a little sharp edge on it, and it scrapes off the glue. Works great. The alcohol loosens the glue. Works. I mean, I don't know. That's just a tip for me. Take my wipe it off. You can use a paper towel, but I usually just use a wipe. Again, that I get from the dollar store. All right. This way, you have a clean surface. And that's why I love these glass mats, because, I don't know, if you do a lot of this stuff, it can get messy. And I have glass underneath, but the mat kind of keeps me from, because when I had my glass before, I would work on top of the glass, but everything would go everywhere. And for me, this helped me kind of keep it all in one, section. And then I just wipe off that when I'm done. My brush, I have a tip for that. I have a little jar that I got from the dollar store. I keep it by my desk. I put a couple drops of soap in it, and I'm lucky enough and blessed enough to have water next to my craft room. It's kind of a Jack and Jill room where the bathroom is in between. But half the time I'm too lazy to go up right away and whatever I'm doing, and clean my brush. So I'll put this in there. I have it next to my desk. And, then when I'm done doing whatever I'm doing, I'll go and rinse out my brushes. Or I've even left them overnight and stuff, and no big harm. So anyway, what you're going to end up with is something like this when you're done, when it dries. So what I do at that point is you want to cut off, you're going to have all this excess on the back, and just kind of cut that off. It's all dry. The one thing you might want to look at, if you have any pieces that are sticking up or whatever that you need to glue down some more, you could do that. And I'm not trying to get it perfect here. I'm just trying to get these little odd pieces off. Now this is the stuff that was overhanging. You do that. Okay, so get all that off of here. So you end up with this, and I know this looks kind of bright, but what happens then is, let's say we cut a piece into a tag. Let me see, how big of a tag do we want to make? I'm going to cut some and then we'll see. this going to fit in that cutter. Yeah, it will. Okay, so let's just say we do a 3-inch, right? I'm going to go a little bit bigger than 3-inch because obviously this is very crooked and I'm going to have to straighten it out. Let's see, one here. Go this way. And I have my big cutter, but I bought this little one because I love having it at my desk for little things, and I use it all the time. All right, let me make the top a little bit straighter. Do that. And so you could just go through, let me get the other side a little bit straighter. Here's that's good right here. Okay, get that in there. Straight. So I got one more side I got to straighten out. There we go. And that's another thing too. I mean, you can certainly cut this by hand, but this, make sure you get it straight. I don't know that this would cut on your regular cutter. I would do it on the back side and go through it a few times. Otherwise, maybe get a ruler and you know, measure it out and cut it. But anyway, let me cut more of these, I think. Let me do that real quick. So 3, 3, 8. Maybe I'll do this one. I'm gonna do 1 4. Maybe I'll just do it like that, like 3.5. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. And then these, I don't know if I make a smaller tag. I'm gonna make a few smaller ones. Maybe I'll make this 1.5. You know, like I don't have anything specifically in mind for these, so I'm just going to cut them up and then use them, you know, however I think I might use them. Let's go 2 inches, maybe a couple of 2-inch tags there. All right, so then let's see, I probably want to, I'm going to keep that big. I'll make this smaller, about 5 inches. Then what does that give me? Now I want to go bigger. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay. So then I end up with all these little pieces like this, different sizes, whatever. And the reason I don't gesso mine, the whole thing, is it just depends on what I'm going to use it for and what I'm going to put on. Like I may not even want to gesso this. I may want to just use it, you know, like it is. But most of the time I do, because I want to dull down some of this color. Oh, and the other thing is I didn't put this pink on the other one, which I probably will go back and do. That's another thing. You can always add things to it later. You don't have to just, you know, leave it however it is. So for instance, for this one, if I want to make a tag out of this, I can cut this. Put this on the other side. I'll do it backwards because I'm right-handed. It's easier for me to cut. All right, so there we go. We have a tag. I mean, you can punch a hole in it. Let's see here. I'm terrible about finding the middle, so what I do is I don't fold it, but I'll go like this, you know, just kind of get an idea of where it is. That way I know I'm kind of sort of in the middle. So anyway, then I have my tag, and I will take, now like I said, you can use white acrylic paint from the dollar store. You don't have to have gesso, because that's all I used for the longest time. But I do have some gesso, and I think it's a good investment. It's a lot thicker, it dries quicker. It has a different consistency, and I've had this jar forever. And I really can't see that, you know, I mean, you're not going to be able to. I'm going to use my same brush. That's another thing. I put very little soap in that. So what will happen is I'll just use this. And this brush is so beat up, but I use it for that. I just take a little on my gesso. Like it's probably too much. You may want to water it down a little. I kind of do a little because it tends to be really thick. Mix it up. And you can see I have very, very little in here. And then I take it and I will go just like this. And less is more here, because you can always go back and add more, but if you put more on there, too much on there, then and so you can see what it did to that really hot pink and stuff. It kind of dulled it down a bunch. So it gives it kind of a different look. Now, if you want this to look a little bit more antique-y, you could take, like I take my good old shoe polish and put a drop, if I can get it out. Let me see. I may have to do it on here to get it out because, okay, there we go. Just a drop, a little bit. And I take that and you put it in here. And what that does is it kind of gives it kind of an antique look. A little bit. No, I probably should have done that before we did this, because now we're adding more on there. But anyway, let me get my wipe here. I think I put too much on that one. If you put too much before it dries, you can just kind of go like that. Yeah, I think I like that better. All right, so that dulls down your intense color on there. And so you end up, now of course this gesso is going to dry really quickly, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my heat gun. So I'm sorry about the noise, but so what this will do, yeah, see, it's almost completely dry already. This dries very, very quickly. Anyway, that is what I would use to have a base of a tag, so that I end up with, you know, something like this later. Now, I added a lot more pinks to this because we're going to use this for our journal that we've made. But anyway, that's just to give you an idea of what you end up with. And you have all these other different pieces that you can use in that journal or another. I tend to not put more than like a couple pieces that I make, you know, in the journal for each journal. But, and I mean, you could do this for a journal cover and then put a different focal point on it. But anyway, that's kind of how I do it. That's how I start out. And then we will go ahead and work on decorating these tags and, you know, using them for our journal at another video. But thank you. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'm getting a little bit more organized and kind of showing you guys how to do a few things. And if you have any questions, just let me know, and y'all have a good day. Thanks a lot.